So I'll now hand you over to the Armed Forces Covenant Trust Fund and Claire Rick. She's the Interim Director of Strategy at the Armed Forces Covenant Fund Trust. And Claire leads on policy, strategy and impact, ensuring the Trust delivers meaningful change for all of the Armed Forces community. Over to you, Claire.
Thanks very much, and thank you for inviting us to come and tell you a little bit about the Covenant Fund. It's really nice to be here, and isn't it horrific to see how your hair colour changes across these different profile pictures that get shared? But moving on from that, so next slide, please, and probably to the next one as well. Thank you. So yeah, just to cover the kind of fundamentals first for anyone who doesn't know that much about us. We're a national funder created in 2018 as both a charity and one of MOD's non-departmental public bodies. We distribute the £10 million annual Covenant Fund on behalf of MOD, but also other funds on behalf of the department and on behalf of the Office for Veterans Affairs, for Treasury, including funds like the Armed Forces Families Fund, the Veterans Capital Housing Programme Fund and the Veterans Mental Health and Wellbeing Programme, just to give you a few examples. We are sometimes confused with the Armed Forces Covenant team. That's not us, but we do work very, very closely with them. And just one of the sort of big differences, I guess, to flag between us and other funders out there is that we fund projects, not organisations, but we'll come on to that in a minute. Next slide, please. So just to sort of give you a bit of a sense of our vision, and as Mary said, actually very much shared vision this, isn't it, across really everybody who's speaking today. Our grant making strategy is informed by MOD's strategies, including the Armed Forces Covenant duty itself, of course, but also the family strategy and the veterans strategy, for example. And our remit is set through public frameworks from MOD every 3 years. You can read those online if you're really interested, but in a nutshell, the Covenant Fund is there to kind of help delivery of the Covenant where statutory services can't reach or can't go, and I'll give you lots of examples of that as we go through. Next slide, please. I mentioned our grant making strategy, so we work on a 3-year basis, and this is the current one, which runs to March 27. That was built through detailed review of evidence and policy to determine the kind of gaps and the needs for those in the armed forces community which aren't being or can't be met through statutory support alone. So it's that bridging between statutory services and the amazing work that's done by the third sector and others. We also used focus groups with organisations and stakeholders from right across the sector to build this strategy, and a big survey which anyone in the community could look to answer. We have more than 500 responses. And the 3 kind of big goals for this cycle were around improving mental health for veterans, reducing isolation and loneliness across the community, and reducing the impacts of stress and challenge for forces families. They were the priorities that the sector gave us, basically. And the blue boxes here show you how different funding programmes within the Covenant Fund are responding to those areas during this cycle. We made the first grants over the course of the 24-25 financial year, and I'll show you what they look like in a minute. But working in this way fundamentally is allowing us to kind of shift our focus to more longer term grants, and that really sort of transformational work that we know is needed. Next slide, please, which just kind of isolates those top line outcomes again. Next slide, please. So every funding programme we design starts with evidence of need. So that's where actually we seek to work really closely with partners like the Centre for Evidence and Mary's team, so that we're getting that sense of where the evidence gaps and the priority needs are. We're talking to those with lived experiences and those who provide support to them. Our team works with universities and other specialist research organisations as well to make sure that our work is drawing from and helping to build that national evidence base on needs of everybody in the community. And this move to a 3-year funding cycle is allowing us to collect and learn from impact data more consistently right across all the projects we fund, and to be able to share that learning with an even wider base. So we're looking to get that learning out there, not just with our government partners, but with other funders and anyone wanting to build their knowledge of how to support the community. Next slide, please. So this is just a little snapshot of our work so far. So lots of the programmes that we've funded through different funds on there. Next slide, please. We have since 2018 managed well over 160 million in grants across all the different funds that we've looked after. We've had almost 7,000 applications and we've made almost 3,000 awards. Next slide, please. This just gives you a sense of how that funding spreads across the UK. Some grants do operate UK-wide, others are supporting forces families overseas. Funded projects themselves, their estimate is that almost 4 million people have been reached by those grants over that time. And in terms of decision making, those decisions are made by our Board of Trustees. That's made up of 7 representatives that are nominated by government and the devolved administrations. 6 of our independent trustees are appointed by the Secretary of State under the public appointments process. 1 is nominated by the chair of COBSEO and 1 is nominated by any one of the family federations in turn. So that rotates. Next slide, please. This just gives you a sense, hopefully, of the different organisations, the kind of range of organisations that get funded through our work. You'll see there NHS organisations among them. Really useful snapshot, I think, of the breadth and depth of the sorts of projects and partnerships. It's those sort of collaborations really that come screaming through to you. And of course, we expect to see that broaden again as the planned expansion of the legal duty rolls out. Next slide, please. So this was what year 1 of that 3-year cycle looked like. So this was for the financial year running to March 25. You can see there 114 grants made and that was where the spend landed. And we just move to the next slide, please. Every programme we design has a theory of change, which is a model that I know lots of you will be familiar with. And of course, that's all about the kind of outcomes end of it. And these are the top 10 outcomes by spend across all of the Covenant Funds programmes last year. I'm just showing you because with a sort of healthcare eye, it is really good to see that the top 3 by spend there are all around enabling that better health and well-being, very especially focusing on the mental health aspects, which we know are obviously a contributor to all sorts of the pressures and challenges facing the NHS. And that was the top priority for the community during our consultation for this strategy. Next slide, please. Just most importantly of all, I guess, this is the sort of 24-25 years snapshot of the people being reached by grants made over that period. I just sort of always highlight really the kind of ripple effects of those who are indirectly benefiting from grants like this. You know, it's kind of easy to forget that indirect group. But these will be the families and carers and the support network of those directly affected by an issue. And actually the change for them can often be as impactful and isn't always recognised. So that's another reason why we're so keen to be maximising the potential for learning and impact data and getting that evidence out so we can build understanding of what more needs to be done and what really works. Next slide, please. So just a few examples in these last few slides of some projects that have had a real health and care leaning in their focus and where we know the learning will sort of help to change and inform the way armed forces people are supported. I could have picked, there are so many projects I could have picked to profile here. I've just picked 4. So next slide, please. So this one hopefully will be familiar to some of you. This is a project we funded together with NHS Improvement back in 2021. This was a £2 million grant to test the concept of an advocacy role for veterans in acute hospital trusts across the UK. On the screen here, hopefully you can see it is a bit small. There's a sort of snapshot of the trusts that were involved with that project. There was no template for how to do it. Each trust which secured a grant developed its own approach to that brief. And in Northern Ireland, actually to say there was a slightly different approach which responded to the needs and solutions that were needed there, with alignment with an award to the Veterans Support Office, which established an out of hours help and advice line for statutory professionals working with veterans. But at their core, all of these roles were around improving identification of veterans in hospital, giving them tailored support, and helping to coordinate between hospitals and specialist charities and organisations who might help that patient as they leave hospital and continue their recovery back at home. There's a fantastic evaluation by the team at the University of Chester's Westminster Centre for Research in Veterans. Definitely worth a read if you want to understand the programme in the round. Next slide, please. On the screen here are just a few snapshots from that evaluation. You can see how the role sort of raised awareness of the needs of veterans among hospital teams and improved experiences in hospital. Some projects were able to show more cost-effective ways of providing support to veterans during their stays in hospital, reducing the length of time they were there, and improving that access to support within the wider local community. And in Northern Ireland, just to flag, the helpline took calls from veterans themselves, statutory and non-statutory organisations. In fact, veterans themselves made up 44% of callers. So really interesting that, demonstration of how veterans will access that sort of support when it's available. And the service played a role in kind of getting help to veterans who may have been previously harder to reach. And in that evaluation, 79% of respondents reported that the advice line had led to a positive impact on their well-being, and analysis of the nature of those queries is informing ongoing work to better support veterans in Northern Ireland. As you can see in the training outcomes as well, these advocate roles have worked to build awareness and skills and culture around supporting veterans in healthcare, all informing lots of the work that's happened subsequently. So really great to see. Next slide, please. Different project just to highlight. Hopefully some of you will be aware of the Thrive Together network of charities, organisations and agencies all working together to enable easy access to mental health and wellbeing support for veterans all over the UK, and also looking at physical health and the health of families. This network was born out of Treasury's £10 million Veterans Health and Wellbeing Programme announced back in 2018. That was all about improving mental health through places of safety and effective pathways of support and access to training for volunteers and staff. And that network has really been a catalyst to bring together more than 500 organisations and agencies, funded and not funded, to reach an estimated 12,000 veterans with mental health and wellbeing support, and an estimated 54,000 beneficiaries in total so far, which is just incredible. The first 2 years of the programme, when it was catchily titled VCHA, saw the involvement of 25 NHS organisations, so all working with charities in their areas and other local organisations around that kind of shared vision that there is no wrong door for veterans' mental health. And the final evaluation of those first 2 years shows that all regions across the UK reported significant progress in those routes to support and referral mechanisms. All reported that their regional network had positively impacted how they approached and supported veterans with mental health needs. Partners expected to see an increase in referrals from GPs to mental health services, a measurable decrease in the number of veteran suicides or incidences of self-harm, and an overall improvement in their confidence and their ability to seek help. And this work is all ongoing now. So if you're looking to get involved with that in your region, you'll find information on each of the Thrive Together regional leads on our website. Next slide, please. So this project, slightly different one. This is one of our transformational projects. So partnering with the Castleford Club of Wounded Veterans, the Scar Free Foundation was awarded £300,000 to do a big piece of work on understanding and alleviating the impact of conflict-related genital scarring and loss of function. They're using that grant to develop interventions to diminish the shame and the stigma and embarrassment that can surround those injuries, and to empower current and future veterans to have fulfilling intimate relationships post-injury. This, as a transformational grant, this is a grant that's going after a really wicked problem. It's what our CEO always calls them, and it's such such a strong example of that transformational programme of work. It's a very neglected issue. So their goal is that through pioneering and collaborative research, they're going to create some tailored psychological support tools for these veterans. Next slide, please. Final one I'll just flag, just because it's a project that really recently launched part of its work out in the world thanks to a grant to Age Cymru Dyfed and Age Cymru Wales. In July, they launched a pioneering new e-learning course, which has been designed with older veterans to improve support to them. Takes 45 minutes to complete, available in English and Welsh, and has UK-wide scope though. And ultimately, it's about reducing hospital readmissions, tackling loneliness and sort of strengthening community ties by giving professionals understanding and tools to spot and support older veterans more effectively. And there's lots of information about that new course on Age Cymru Dyfed's website. Next slide, please. This is my last slide, but it was just to kind of flag, if you're listening with a project idea which perhaps aligns with the priorities of our strategy and you're working with voluntary sector partners on it in your area, that's where so much of the magic for patients can happen, in those collaborations. Keep an eye on our programmes page on our website. That's where you'll find everything you need to know about programmes that are open for applications and their eligibility criteria. We also have a newsletter you can sign up to where you'll find reminders of closing dates and new funding opportunities. And there's just fantastic learning and evidence to come out of the collaborations that get made through grant funding. So we are always looking forward to what's coming next. Thank you very much for having me.
Claire, thanks ever so much for that sort of hectic gallop through what you guys do, actually. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. And sorry, just picking up on the e-learning in Wales, I have done that, actually. It's a really good package, and I've got some ideas that I might steal. So, no, thank you very much. And can I say your hair looks fine to me, but I mean, what do I know?